5 years later, I'm still waiting for that assurance to come true. You've heard my say. I would like you to listen, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Councilman. Christopher Kuntz on behalf of Paul Koretz, the maker of the second motion. I wanted to distinguish what we're trying to do from some of the other testimony before you. Councilman Koretz would agree with the maker of the first motion that we have a major problem in this city. We have way too many dispensaries. They operate under basically no rules. They're having serious impacts on communities. What we're trying to do is have a very small number of dispensaries that are widely regulated. We're able to do that by offering those that have existed a very long time, if they come into compliance, to continue to exist. And we would still be shutting down approximately 90% of the dispensaries that exist in the city. We would have a well-regulated system. That's all that we're asking. That's our alternative approach. I know that's not the approach everyone's interested in, but we feel that you can find a balance between patient needs and protecting communities, that in fact you can do both, and that's what our motion's all about. Thank you.
Great, thank you. If you can please, as I call the speakers, just get ready to line up right behind one after the other. And if the next speaker's not available, if you're closer to the mic, feel free to take the mic.
Good morning, council members. Rick Coker with Councilmember Weezar's office. Thank you for considering these items today. We know it's a heavy burden for you, but a necessary one. The council member just feels strongly that at this point we really need to adhere to state law. Yesterday and a couple of days before, the federal government has been cracking down on dispensaries in the county, in the region, Southern California region, not because they're not in compliance with federal law, which they aren't. It's just on a if you look at it at kind of eye-to-eye level, but because they are not in compliance with California law, where you're selling for profit. And so the council member's proposal is to adhere to state law that allows for patients to grow their own. It also allows for an amendment from the city attorney's office that 3 or fewer patients or caregivers can grow collectively together. We think it's the only real solution at this point. The other proposal, with all due respect, we've gone down that road. It was called our ordinance. We wanted 100 dispensaries to be open, and we got sued to high heaven. There's been a proposal that's out there for the same thing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Megan Ryan.
My name is Megan Ryan. I am a graduate of UCLA. I am a registered voter, and I am a patient of medical cannabis. I am opposed to this ban, and I urge you to oppose it as well. Do not send legitimate patients to the streets. Do not send them out into the black market. Doing that would increase the cost of the medicine and decrease the quality of the medicine available. There are people without access to this medicine who truly, truly need it, and by imposing this ban, you are restricting their access. I urge you to please do not ban dispensaries in Los Angeles.
Great. Thank you. Got a Mr. and Mrs. or a Yeno. I can't make out the first name. Yeno Nadia is next. That's Nadia Smalley and Martha Dirkshan. I'm just trying to read the writing. David Gold after that. In any order, whoever's ready, come on up. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Nadia Smalley, and I'm here to speak against the ban. I'm the voice for those people that can speak. I believe this is a form of double jeopardy. We need to have medical marijuana for all patients. It's already been voted on for the people by the people. We need to keep all collectives open. It's a $1 billion industry, for the people that need it. They need their medication. They cannot function without their medication. The cancer patients, there's nothing working for some people. Please do not close the dispensaries. We are against this ban. We need to medicate. We need to medicate. Please. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning.
My name is Mitra Derrickson. I'm from Los Angeles. I'm a registered voter. I'm a student, and I'm here to oppose the ban. I think it's a step in the wrong direction. people need their medicine. I have seen people come out of their cancer. I've seen them get healed. I've seen them have a better quality of life. And if you ban medical marijuana collectives, it would be a terrible decision. Thank you so much for your time. Have a
Great.
wonderful morning.
Thank you very much. Morning.
Morning. My name is Tara Yeno,
Tara.
and I'm Tara. Yeah.
Okay, was trying to read the writing.
T-A-R-A.
Got it.
Tara.
Okay.
Okay.
Great writing. Okay, thank you.
And I'm here to speak on opposing the ban to medical dispensaries, and the reason being, as you know, everybody else has mentioned, it allows safer access, and it also allows for cleaner medicine. It's truthfully really going to go to the black market. You're not going to stop patients from needing the medicine that they've become so accustomed to being able to have, and you may put more patients in jeopardy by having them go someplace where it's not going to be as clean and pure. And also with our healthcare system already, for people who have insurance and whatnot, it's already in such chaos that people who don't have enough money are able to go and get compassion and things like that with this medical marijuana movement that we have. And so I oppose the ban. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Morning.
Hi, good morning. My name is David Gold. I've been coming to these council meetings and we've been working on this process for 5 years, and all of you are very respected and qualified at what you do, and it just seems like this has been a process that's just gone on without enough knowledge on our side of what we have to offer in intelligent people that are qualified. There are people that have worked, like individuals like Don Duncan, for instance, who's just full of knowledge and understanding of what is necessary from our end to work with your end. We've gone with the ordinances, and you've created these rules, and out of all the dispensaries that have met those rules, it just seems like it has not gone anywhere, and then it just proliferated into everywhere because of this inability to just come to a decision.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Barry Johnson, followed by Joanne, followed by Lisa Sarkin and Sarah Armstrong.
Barry Johnson, Studio City Residents Association board member. We support anything that will bring under control a problem that has really gotten away from the original intent of the state law. In Studio City, we have 12 of these businesses in 3 miles. That's more than the total number of pharmacies we have. We just believe something has to be done to bring this under control. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Morning, Joanne Deutsch. I'm a stakeholder in the Studio City Neighborhood Council.
Morning.
And I'm informed, thank you, good morning to you. I am well informed on the medical marijuana issue, and I'd like to be able to speak to a couple of points. One of them, I want to point out to you that most people who have spoken this morning have spoken in terms of dispensaries, and that the medical marijuana business has become a business, is no longer a collective. And I'd like to also bring to your attention in your consideration process that there's a distinction between the social use of medical marijuana, and those people go to the dispensaries, and the medical need for use of the dispensaries. And you need to distinguish between those. And I can count on one hand the number of the 13 dispensaries in Studio City that are like proper corporations. They have their certificate of stockholders, so you know who their owners are. You know who their operators are. They don't pay, I suspect they don't pay taxes except for those small number of members in our community. You need to consider that. They're not good corporate neighbors.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Lisa Sarkin, Studio City Neighborhood Council Vice President, and I'm Chair of the Land Use Committee, but I'm here speaking for myself. We have as you've heard, 13 or 12 or 13, we're not sure, of the medical marijuana dispensaries. That's way too many for 38,000 people in a 3.5 by 3 mile area. They also abut many residences. The way that Studio City is made up, on Ventura Boulevard, there's houses on both sides of Ventura Boulevard, so they abut them. We need the departments to be working together, and honestly, I believe the only way we can do it is by passing the gentle ban. We need to start over. We've been trying this for how long? I can't even remember. And we just absolutely must have something that gets us to start over. The patients who really need it have to have access, but fiddling around with Mr. Koretz's ordinance, whatever it is, just won't work. We've tried that. How many times? How many lawsuits do we have? So we have to start over. Please support the gentle ban. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Armstrong. I'm the legal liaison for the Greater Los Angeles Collective Alliance. You've heard today many, many reasons for not supporting Paul Koretz's motion. I'm going to give you a few good reasons to support it. The reason the previous ordinance written by Jane Usher, which was a good ordinance, didn't work was because it was never enforced, not because it was per se faulty. If you start over with a limited immunity ordinance, you will give a small amount of access to the people who really need it, and you'll put it in the hands of the people who have always been responsible adults about running their organizations. Additionally, if you reset the legal landscape and begin again with a full ban, you think you've seen lawsuits in the past or legal problems, you are setting the stage for an enormous, enormous tsunami of problems. If instead you do the limited immunity ordinance, those issues have all been explored in court. They are awaiting a decision in the appellate division. There is not going to be any more lawsuits because you don't get to sue endlessly on the same things. Please support Paul Koretz's ordinance. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Fusen Thompson. Josine Posey. Sam Humid. Come on up. Help me out with this one, brother.
DJ Cortez?
And
D. Cortez.
D. Cortez. Or Carter. Or Contraire. Okay. We'll figure it out. Yes.
Good morning, Mr. Englander. My name is Hassan Thompson. I have a problem with the ban as well, and I urge those with voting power to either make a motion to postpone this indefinitely or find some other way to kill this motion altogether. I believe the way the language is set up is poorly decided. Calling it a business instead of collectives puts the language and the definition at a precarious situation and gives a bad name to the collectives. I think by naming the qualified patients, primary caregivers, licensed clinics, and vehicles recriminalizes the entire purpose of those that are attempting to do this in a legal fashion. And I believe as the Committee on Public Safety, Mr. Englander, you would be the primary person to create such a motion to kill this since you brought it in the first place. I appreciate your cooperation. Thank you all for your time.
Great, thank you. Sam? Come on. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Joe Sean Posey, and I'm speaking on behalf of it's Joe Sean Posey, yeah.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
I originally got into the community because my grandmother, she had Parkinson's and everything, and she was being fed by the tube with with her food and everything. But then she started taking cannabis and everything, and it eventually helped her where she can eat, start gaining weight and everything, and so I'm definitely against the ban and just trying to see if we can work something out. I mean, if you guys can make some kind of other alternatives. All right, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Good morning, council members. My name is Sam Humid, operator of Perennial Holistic Wellness Center in Studio City and member of the Studio City Neighborhood Council Medical Marijuana Advisory Committee. I want to make very clear that our committee has worked together to find options to work in Studio City with the 5 dispensaries that are registered pre-ICO to have regulations that work. And to point out that the Neighborhood Council voted 5-4-1 not to support the ban. Yesterday we lobbied and brought many patients to your offices for you to see firsthand the people you'll be affecting by putting a full enforcement ban in. If you choose to go with the the Weezer motion, I strongly suggest sending your resumes afterwards to the Syrian government because they would love that kind of lack of compassion. Thank you.
Thank you. I can't, we're not allowed to have the dialogue, I'm sorry. I wish we could, and under all the rules that we've got to follow legally, we don't have the ability to have the dialogue, so. Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Dejay Kuti. I live and vote in Central Hollywood. I agree with a lot of the comments that my colleagues have already made this morning. I just want to point out a couple things that I've heard. One, if you cut this city down to just a handful of dispensaries, as you've already heard, we have between 350, 400,000 patients. You're going to create lines outdoors. You're going to have collectives that will have to have hundreds of pounds of cannabis on hand at any one time. That's a very unsafe situation. Some other things that concern me about this potential ordinance is some of the misleading information. We've heard all this story about crime that is coming from council members' offices or individuals, and it is in complete contradiction to what we're hearing from the police department, so I think we have some misrepresentation going on. Another example of that is last week we heard in the Plum Committee from the council that there are no workable ordinances in any other communities in the state, which is also false. We've got West Hollywood, San Francisco, Oakland. Please oppose this ban. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. We did have two other speaker cards. The person on Lexington, and we could not make out the first name. I attempted. That was you. Okay, got it. Thank you. And Monica is the last card. Sidnor. Monica. That's the last card that we have. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Monica Sidnor. I'm a registered voter in Los Angeles County, and I'm against the ban on dispensaries. I am a medical marijuana user. I suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, and I am a 54-year-old woman who does not want to go into dangerous situations to get the medication that I need. I'm a functioning, contributing member of the society, and I have never been to a dispensary and seen anything, any crime, anybody defecating anywhere. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I've been to numerous dispensaries in the state of California, and I've never seen it. I'm really against this ban. I don't know how you can decide which dispensaries are good and which ones are bad. I don't think you can cut down to 100, and I don't think that you should. I don't have transportation.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. And we did have one last card. Daniel Sosa is the last speaker card.
Thank you. My name is Daniel Sosa. I'm an operator of a collective in Los Angeles. You guys are really failing to effectively legislate. We've seen that over the last several years. Every time you guys pass an ordinance that's completely ineffective, and you guys get mired in lawsuits that cost the city hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. There are 350,000 to 400,000 patients in the city of Los Angeles. That's about 1 out of every 16 people you throw at everybody who's under 18. Probably about 1 out of every 10, 1 out of every 12 adults is a patient in this city. Would you guys rather have collectives where you know where the medicine is and everything's cool, or would you rather have drug dealers and gangs profiting and making the money off of cannabis? Do you really want to send patients to the black market where it's dangerous for them to obtain their medicine? I think we should really, considering this is a public safety meeting, I think we should really consider these issues. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, we have another final card. So the final cards keep coming in. Joanne, please. Good morning.
Good morning. I just wanted to relate an experience that I had a couple of months ago at Enterprise Rent-A-Car on Sherman Way. I was returning my car, and two people came in, and they were stoned out of their gourds. And they had been smoking pot in the rental car and proceeded, they had to call the police. And they're sitting there and they're going, but it's legitimate. I have a legitimate reason for having the pot. It's very legitimate. And I'm sitting there going, why would they need to have a prescription? Because all they were just stoneheads. They didn't have any legitimate disabilities or anything that anybody could see. And that that I could see. So, that concerns me, that there are a lot of people out there who get these prescriptions who don't really need it, and it's an excuse for them to get high. Secondly, there's a pot place right across.
I have to cut your microphone off. If I give you more time, I've got to give everybody else more time. It's got to be an issue of fairness. Okay. Thank you. That concludes public comment. I have no more cards, so we're going to go ahead and close the public comment period for items 6 and 7, and we'll go ahead and open it up to discussions from the committee. I'm happy to open unless one of my colleagues wants to go ahead and assume the microphone first. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and it goes back, as has been mentioned, 5 years ago. I was the one that did the motion in the City Council that we would have some regulatory activity because there were collectives opening up throughout the city of Los Angeles, and the numbers were staggering. So I came up with the original motion, and that was at least 5 years ago, and we wanted a motion to have control, to follow what the state mandate was, that it would be used for medical purposes, and there'd be controls and regulations, et cetera. So the intention was very legit, to have folks that needed it for medical purposes, that had the recommendation from a legitimate doctor, they would be able to obtain it in a fair, safe fashion. It wouldn't have a negative impact on neighborhoods, and everyone would be able to live in peace and tranquility. That was the original concept, the original idea, the original motion, because prior to that we had no regulation in the city of Los Angeles, and they were opening up at various locations across from high schools, and there were just a lot of problems. So my intention originally was to bring some uniformity, some control, and have it blend with the community instead of clashing with the community. It started litigation, the long tail of litigation, and litigation continued, and Jane Usher is here from the City Attorney's Office who has championed this through the City Attorney's Office. So the litigation continued and continued and continued, and we kept on having hearings, and we'd have debates, we'd have discussions in council, we'd have committee hearings, and it was like a merry-go-round, and it kept on going round and round and never stopped. I went to a couple of collectives with Mr. Reyes, who was on the committee. We looked at the collectives, we toured through them, we saw the operations that were taking place. We came up with the idea that we would have an interim control ordinance. We would have a number of locations that would be identified, they would comply, and everyone would live in a tranquil environment. The courts couldn't get their act together. The courts kept on coming in with different decisions, and it would go to a different level. So that merry-go-round continued. We wanted to bring it under control. And what happened is every time we would do something, something else would come in and intercede, and more litigation would take place. So the numbers kept on growing. The city attorney kept on intervening. The city attorney kept on coming up with ideas and concepts. The ICOs, pre-ICO, after ICO, now I hear there's 350 to 400,000 individuals who are utilizing marijuana. Whether you want to say medical marijuana or marijuana, it's marijuana. Whether it's a grow house for medical purposes or a grow house for someone who wants to get high, marijuana is marijuana. And I understand there's a legitimate purpose for it, for people who need it, cancer patients. And the city attorney, Mr. Janich, and I have discussed this, and he's been supportive of that. Many of my colleagues have been supportive for legitimate medical purposes, not for someone who wants to just get high, but for legitimate medical purposes. And I still support that. I still support the use of medical marijuana for legitimate medical purposes. And the problem, and I've been approached by different organizations, different entities, different people say, let's have 100, let's have a fewer number. And then some people say, let's just have whatever we want. The problem is lawsuits continue to file. It continues to stumble through the court system. The courts don't make a decision, and then it falls back. And whether it's Long Beach or Los Angeles or some other communities, I support that we have a legitimate number of locations that are regulated, and they're following the compliance of what the mandate of the voting public was, and continue that instead of having the black market. We're going to have a black market one way or another. And this reminds me of Prohibition, where we had Prohibition and we had, thank you, Elliot Ness and the Untouchables. And I remember that show. It was a great show. And the bootleggers. Well, what happens is there's a lot of people. In fact, there was a grow that was just discovered a couple days ago on Havenhurst between Van Owen and Sherman Way. And there's grows all over the place. We understand that. There's the cartel that ships in marijuana. The fact is the people who need it for a legitimate purpose should have access to that and not disrupt the neighborhoods. That's the key. Now, what that number is that magic number 100? Is that magic number 50? Is that magic number 10? I don't know what the magic number is, but I don't think it should be like we have on every corner a gas station or we have a mini mall. What we need is to have it regulated. We have the people comply with it, and we have to stop the lawsuits, because all that does is string it on for another 5 years, and nothing happens. And I've read about the DEA and the Sheriff's Department and all the enforcement activities that are taking place. What we need to do is come up with a final conclusion to this, which was the original intention, so people could use it for legitimate purposes and not disrupt neighborhoods and not have it next to a school or next to a liquor store or next to a bar. That's what we need to work together to make it happen and not continue this litigation and continue these hearings and continue this process where we're going nowhere. And the rich people are getting richer, the poor people are getting poorer, and the fact is we're not accomplishing what the goal was, to have it regulated. So my focus on it is not to ban it. My focus on it is what we originally intended to do, what the city attorney supported, and what many people say is let's have a legitimate number, and those fly-by-nights somehow put them out of business. And I'm not talking about anything other than a legal process to put them out of business, and have it regulated so we don't have this disruption and this constant merry-go-round that doesn't seem to stop. And I will stop now. Thank you.
All right. So, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Zine. You got a cheering crowd. Brought your cheerleaders. Thank you. With that, I think it's important to we've gotten the history, and I appreciate that, Mr. Zine. And I agree. I think the city of LA has experimented with marijuana and has failed miserably. And it's not about the folks in this room, quite frankly. I think for the most part, you guys have done a good job. It's not about compassionate use. It's not about the health issues and the effects or the benefits of marijuana to those who need it. It's not what this is about. If it were about that, we wouldn't be here, quite frankly. It's not about the few bad apples that have spoiled it or has created these problems. It's about the many that have spoiled it for the few. There have been very good operators out there. There's no question. There have been operators that haven't had a problem. There have been many public speakers here this morning and prior to this hearing that have stated that they've been to many of these dispensaries, if you will, and haven't seen any of these problems that are being reported by LAPD, by the way. These are all in police reports. And I will read you the list of the types of arrests that have been made from and around many of these illegal storefront facilities. Now, what we're talking about is this is the Public Safety Committee, not the Public Health Committee. So we're not talking here about the effects or benefits or need. We're talking about the issue of having the illegal pot shop storefronts, not what was necessarily or perhaps intended by the voters per se. And it's not a ban on marijuana in the city of LA. What we're talking about is banning what was not intended, the legal pot shop storefronts that allow all to access cash front, cash and carry, and this is what we have found through police reports. We have had nearly 1,000 of these, 1,000 of these throughout the city of LA. This proliferation has caused all kinds of havoc and problems in communities, and again, not by the reputable operators, but by the ones that haven't been following the rules, the ones that have had assault rifles, the ones that have been closed down with massive amounts of cocaine and methamphetamine and other drugs. I've been to these facilities, and I've seen it. We've had arrests with aggravated assault, attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, burglary, theft from motor vehicle, curfew violations, disorderly conduct, driving under the influence, drug law violations including possession of cocaine and other drugs, fraud, grand theft, identity theft, larceny, loitering, murder, organized crime, possession of assault guns, public drunkenness and intoxication, robbery, possession of stolen property, vandalism, possession of deadly weapons. These are some of the charges from some of the arrests that have been made directly at, and again, not the facilities perhaps are the ones that you guys are here to represent or the ones that you frequent, but many, many of the others in every community. This is in the court system right now to decide. The idea of having this type of ban is directly what our city attorney has asked us to do to make sure that we have a refresh, a restart, and we start off on a clean page and do something correctly because it got out of control. The fact that we had more of these in communities than we had ice cream parlors is disturbing. That was never the intention, and I think everybody agrees with that. And so with that, I strongly support item 6 and the recommendation from the Plum committees, and I would ask for this committee to approve and concur with the Plum committee report on item 6. And we do have a note on 7 from Plum as well, and I conclude with the recommendation on 7 from the Plum committee as well to move forward to public safety. I do have an LAPD officer here, a captain, if we could come up. Captain Hart, I would like to hear directly from LAPD, if we could, on some of your experiences that you've dealt with directly and some of the stories, if you could share with us some of those issues that we've had with these problems in our communities as well. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Bill Hart. I am a captain with LAPD. I'm the commanding officer of Gang and Narcotics Division. In that capacity, I have either direct or indirect supervision over several hundred detectives that work with this issue on a daily basis. And I'm here to represent the department today to support the draft ordinance. It's not the proposed draft ordinance. It's not that the police department...
Just for clarification, there's 2 before us, items 6 and 7. 6, which is what the police chief has indicated he supports of the total ban right now until we can work it out with the courts, and 7 was the softer, if you will.
Item 6, Counselor, okay, I'm sorry. It's not that the police department is opposed to qualified patients receiving their medicine. That's not the case. However, we believe that item 6, the ordinance in item 6, would reflect more appropriately what's authorized under state law. It's been said many times that the existing ordinance has proven ineffective. It just hasn't worked. It's led to the proliferation of anywhere between 700 or 800 dispensaries, maybe more. And based on what my detectives report to me, there are some exceptions, but many, if not most of those are for-profit businesses that are selling marijuana, recreational marijuana, to healthy young adults. I think I can also speak for the captains at the 21 area stations. They receive complaints virtually every day, either directly or via their senior lead officers or their narcotic enforcement detail personnel, sometimes from the council districts. Citizens complaining regarding the resale of marijuana outside dispensaries, loitering, trash, other issues that are what we would call quality of life issues.
Can you share with us any of the stories, if you would, or any of the crimes specifically that you're familiar with as well?
I'm familiar with multiple burglaries at marijuana dispensaries. It happens frequently.
Have any of these been violent that you're aware of?
Well, let me tell you one story, Councilman. There was a dispensary actually in Councilman Boscaino's district that was burglarized so often that the proprietor decided that to protect his business, he would spend the night there and armed himself and was spending the night in the dispensary when it was burglarized again. by armed suspects, and there was a gunfight that erupted inside the dispensary, and one of the suspects was wounded, as was the owner of the dispensary. It's fortunate that nobody was killed, but there was a possibility that there could have been several people killed in that incident. I'm personally aware, previous assignment, I was at Wilshire area, and I'm personally aware of 2 murders that occurred related to dispensaries, one of which involved a young unarmed security guard who was employed by the dispensary and who tried to intervene during a robbery and was shot and basically executed by the suspects there. We've had takeover robberies where not only employees of the dispensary but customers who were inside were duct taped and held at gunpoint while the business was robbed, and numerous other crimes. You went over the list of things that have occurred at or near dispensaries, and I think that's a pretty all-encompassing list.
Is there anything else you wanted to add? And do I have any questions from my colleagues? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your time in coming this morning as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Krikorian, did you have anything?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Look, I think the bottom line is the reason that this has been an essentially failed policy in this city is for many of the reasons that were cited by Mr. Zine, but one additional reason, and that is that the state law, both the initiative and the implementing ordinance, are miserably ineffective in defining what it is that we should be doing in order to provide safe access to legitimate marijuana patients in this state. They just failed utterly to be able to give guidance to local government in how we can regulate this and how we can do it in an appropriate way to meet the needs of all of the people who testified about their legitimate use of marijuana as a drug. And that leaves that burden then on local government to try to figure out in a vacuum how best to do this. At the same time that the legal landscape is changing, as Mr. Zine correctly pointed out, on a regular basis with each new court decision that pulls the carpet out from under us and makes us try to figure it out over again. So I guess my position is this. We are left right now in the worst of all possible worlds. We have an out-of-control proliferation of dispensaries throughout the city, which is flooding our communities, causing adverse impacts, and bringing a bad name to those who want to legitimately do what the voters thought we were doing when we voted for this, which is to provide safe access to cancer patients and others who legitimately want to use marijuana as a drug. So that's the challenge that I have in trying to do this. We've been, for the last week, I mean, this long preceded me, the city of Los Angeles has been trying to build this airplane as we're flying it. And that, I think, is why we haven't been able to develop sound, useful policy. And it's why, frankly, what's happened in Los Angeles has made a mockery of the whole concept of medical marijuana, in my view. When we have constituents coming to us and saying, really, do we really need medical marijuana dispensaries every other block? Are there so many, people who are suffering from these horrible diseases that are using this drug that we need it, in every single neighborhood, across from every park, within a few blocks of every school, it seems, throughout Los Angeles? And the answer is, of course not. The statistics that some of the advocates gave here today, that 350 or 400,000 medical marijuana patients are in Los Angeles, I'm sorry, but with respect, that statistic alone proves that we've made a mockery of this. Because there are not 1 out of 10 people in Los Angeles using marijuana for medical purposes. it just simply is. It is not. It is on its face. It is ludicrous to suggest that. Now, at the same time, when we hear from our police department that there are these significant problems around dispensaries, I take that as a serious and real concern. But at the same time, we have crime around liquor stores, too. We have crimes around 7-Elevens, too. We have crimes around every kind of business, and yet we aren't banning that entire line of business because there are crimes that occur there. So you can tell by my comments that I'm still struggling to try to find the right answer here as well. I know that we have not had the right answer. What we have tried has failed. That much I know. I also know that I want to preserve the intent of the voters in passing the initiative authorizing medical marijuana use to legitimate patients. Where we have failed as a state is several places along the line. First, in authorization of use in the first place. I don't think there's any protocol that has any legitimacy in this state for actually giving real patients with real diseases, real concerns, separating those from people who say, you know, I'm having trouble sleeping. And that's a very fundamental defect in this whole line of policy. So I am planning to support going forward with this discussion into full council, because I think it's important that we present the council with the options, as many options as we can for fixing this. I want to hear city attorney's discussion with full council when we discuss this. I'm inclined at this point to support moving forward both options to council. I think that Mr. Kretz's option is a gallant attempt to try to significantly reduce the number of dispensaries, preserve the quality of life in our communities, and at the same time provide safe access and give an opportunity to legitimate operators to continue to provide that safe access. What I don't know is whether it works legally or whether it works pragmatically, and whether it's fair, because it's going to produce winners and losers. It will produce some dispensaries that are going to be, as some of the advocates even suggested, that are going to have lines, that are going to become fabulously wealthy, and you're going to have others that are going to be put out of business. And I'm not sure how fair that is in practice. So I'm prepared to move forward with both of them. I'm prepared to support both of them today. How I end up voting on council is going to depend on a lot further discussion that I want to have with the city attorney, with law enforcement, and also with the advocacy community, so that I can figure out what is going to work to provide those objectives of safe access to those who legitimately really need this for medical reasons, while at the same time protecting the integrity and the quality of life and the community character of the neighborhoods around this city.
Mr. Buscaino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I struggle with this, knowing that, and thank you so much to each and every one of you for coming to share your concerns with this committee. As you well know, I freshly I've come from the Los Angeles Police Department as a senior lead officer, and I have been in living rooms, various neighborhood watch meetings and neighborhood watch groups to discuss this issue. I've been in storefronts and dealing with a number of business watch groups in the harbor area. And this single-handedly, I believe, is one of the issues that I have dealt with numerous occasions as a senior lead officer. And Mr. Engler, thank you for sharing with us the types of crimes. And I personally have seen these investigative reports, these IRs come through my desk. Burglary associated with these dispensaries, fraud, identity theft, murder, larceny, robbery, vandalism. Again, this is a public safety concern. And I've been, along with my LAPD colleagues, the police officers need to be given some direction, which currently they have none. And when my sister, who is a 7th grade history teacher at a local middle school in San Pedro, tells me that her students are smoking weed during recess because of the older brother has a medical marijuana card, it's disturbing to me and the community. In Harbor City, in the main corridors, and Gaffey along San Pedro. Just yesterday, I was driving along Gaffey, and one of the dispensaries had a huge sign that says, "Doctor's note recommended." And I thought to myself, shouldn't it read, "Doctor's note required"? So I too support moving forward to full discussion with the complete city council and also the city attorney. I'll also note that if we can note and file Councilmember Koretz's motion, if you can just get some clarity on that, Mr. Chair.
So how it would work is we'll go ahead and take up each item separately. The items 6 and 7. Either way, if we support, as indicated, that maybe support for one or two of these. Either way, no matter if it's a note and file, they still both move forward to council. It's just an indication from the committee what direction the committee, only as a committee, as it pertains to public safety and public safety only, made the decision. The council and in the Plum Committee, just so y'all understand, because it was duly referred, only dealt with the planning and land use issues and aspects of the ordinance as it pertains to planning and zoning, and made the recommendation based on that committee and the purview of that committee. Public safety and the public safety elements that go into planning as well. In the Public Safety Committee, that's our purview is public safety. And so the recommendation would come out of public safety, specifically pertaining to public safety elements. However, whatever we do in committee, unless we kept either one of them in committee, I don't intend to do that. As the chair, I don't intend to move one item and keep the other in committee. I intend to move both with the recommendation of a note and file for the other committee, which could also dramatically change in council once we've had the discussion. So if we're all prepared, unless you want clarifications, Mr. Zine.
I'd just like to add that if you look at item number 6, which is the Weezer Englander motion, Perry Parks repealing, I don't know if people are aware of this aspect of it. The draft ordinance would ban medical marijuana business, which include any location where marijuana is cultivated, possessed, distributed, delivered, or given away. The draft ordinance excludes the following from the definition of medical marijuana business: any dwelling unit where a maximum of 3 or fewer qualified patients or primary caregivers possess or associate to collectively or cooperatively cultivate marijuana on site. 2, any location during that time reasonably required for a primary caregiver to distribute, deliver, or give away marijuana. Hospices and licensed clinics, facilities, and home health agencies where qualified patients receive medical care or supportive services, and designate the owner, operator, or employee designated by the owner, operator of the clinic, facility, hospice, or home health agency as a primary caregiver. So even in Mr. Weezer and Mr. Perry, correct, there's still the opportunity on a very limited basis to have, so it's not an outright ban totally, it would exclude that aspect of sale, whereas the motion by Mr. Koretz, Mr. Weston, is a motion that would limit the number of locations and still comply with the state ordinance. So I just wanted to make sure that folks knew that number 6 still provides opportunity where they can still have medical marijuana.
That's correct. And so just as a clarification, it is not a complete ban. Item 6 is not a ban of medical marijuana. It's a soft ban. We have had direct instruction from the city attorney and worked very closely with the city attorney on the language of this. This is what the courts have been looking at as well, which is why this has not been called a ban or a complete ban, but a soft ban. It's been editorialized otherwise, but the language insist otherwise. And so thank you for the clarification, Mr. Zine, and that's why we were very careful in crafting this language and not calling this a ban, because it is not a ban. So with that, we'll go ahead and take up item 6 on the committee. All those in favor? Aye. No? Okay. We'll go ahead and note that Mr. Zine is a no vote and move that item onto council. Item 7. It'll be a note and file as recommended from by the committee. All those in favor? Aye. As a note and file, aye. And 1 no vote for Mr. Zine. Okay, that and item 8, unless there's reason to go into closed session, and anybody had any further questions on this? Okay, that will conclude the agenda of the Public Safety Committee, and we are now adjourned. Thank you.